more and more import into India. In China, if you see international trade, for example, clusters, all the clusters have a kind of backward forward linkages. Now, how do they do it? I'll give you one example because Central Asia is my favorite destination. We have given a credit line of 80 million we started with. Now it has gone to 800 million. And they have given a credit line of 800 billion. Now, what is a credit line? How do you push a credit line? What do you do in credit line is that you go to Africa or Central Asia and say that this is the money which we are giving to you as a loan, soft loan, maybe interest-free loan, and you have to buy only Indian goods or Chinese goods. So all those clusters which are there, they are producing that kind of a cluster. They have a kind of linkage with the Central Asian market or the African market, and that's how the Chinese goods are being pushed there. Realizing that Chinese goods have a very low kind of, because they are considered to be goods of mass consumption, they have set up a separate line where the government public sector is dedicated, Chinese public sector, to produce goods of very high quality. So if you ask a Chinese kind of exporter, he will say that we have both the things. You want a good quality, it's there. You want goods of mass consumption, it's also there. They are trying to now develop very, very emphatically those which can basically remove their image of a producer of a poor quality good which has stuck for a very long time. So with this backward forward linkage, what we call is a marketing linkage, they have been able to push the goods both domestically as well as in the international market. And the third part is that they have developed, as I always say, somebody says what is the worst problem with your export vision? I said my export vision because both eyes hurt. You know, in your vision if one eye is interest rate, where you do not have the low interest rate so that you can put it into the economy, and second is the infrastructure, these two eyes. So in China, both these eyes are very well developed, and in China what they have done basically is that they have not allowed their currency to go into the international, pegged into the international floating currency. Because Indian currency is floating to the international currency, it goes up and it goes down. China, they have controlled it, not because it will depreciate, because it will appreciate so much that export will become non-competitive. So the Chinese currency is possibly one of the strongest currency, and they are holding it very tightly so that their exports do not suffer. So in an economy where the government still controls and that amount of discipline is there, is bound to do little better than one where there is little more democratization, and we have not been able to put so much emphasis on infrastructure and interest rate, which is now happening.
Yeah, let me just collaborate a little further and add on our Honorable Prime Minister's favorite, because he also, like you, managers thinks, in terms of 4 P's and 8 O's, and as he says, the 2 I's, interested in infrastructure. आपने सुना होगा कि हमारे Prime Minister ने भाषण दिया था अभी, and he said that we need to focus on 3 S's. One is size and scale, second is speed, and third is scale. Now you asked a very logical question, why is it that the Chinese clusters are more efficient than the Indian clusters? I have not been to China, but of course Ambe has been to China a couple of times. If you go to any of the special economic zones, you will be astonished and amazed to see the size of the special economic zones. Our SEZs look to be pygmies. The size of a SEZ in China is, hundreds of square kilometers. So the size and scale is awesome. So they are more efficient than us. Number 2 is the speed. Now being a totalitarian regime, their decision making is highly expeditious. We as a democracy, our decision making goes through a labyrinth of bureaucracies, which we are of course trying to cut down. And third, of course, is skill. We need to skill our great demographic dividend, otherwise it will become a demographic disaster. Okay? Next. Yeah.
In this union budget, it was proposed that to promote export, we should establish missions to export promotion, so that all the stakeholders can come under one roof. So, what are your views on it? Is it helpful or not?
Exporters come under one roof.
All the state to promote export, we should create some mission so that all the stakeholders can come under one roof and work over it. So, what are your views?
No, we have export promotion councils. We have got export promotion councils as stakeholders to protect the interest of a particular industry. Say for apparel, we have Apparel Export Promotion Council. For handicrafts, Export Promotion Council of Handicrafts. leather, console leather exports. So they belong to that cluster. Similarly for our agriculture commodities, say like tea, coffee, rubber, we have commodity boards. But what I think our finance minister was hinting at was that we need to execute in a mission mode. With missionary zeal. Like your teachers, Professor Anuj Sharma, teaches with a lot of missionary zeal. So whatever work we do, we must bring a lot of passion into it, a lot of dedication into it, as a missionary, as the missions would do. The Christian missionaries, when they would go to new countries, they would preach and teach with a lot of missionary zeal. So probably, as I said, we have slipped from our target of 500 billion US dollars of merchandise exports by 2014. We have slipped by 40%. Today we are only 300 billion. So we only achieved 60%. We need to go a long, long way to bridge that gap. So that gap will be bridged through a missionary zeal. Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, as I gather information about you, that you have started with the job of SGO in the JR Trail on 1st May 1988, and now you are at the post of DGFT. You have visited many different countries like Moscow and worked there, and also various states of India like Assam and Delhi. What was the difference in the work culture you find, and the difference in the policies, foreign policies, India and the foreign countries?
Well, the whole world is, I'm quite well travelled, of course not as well travelled as Amya, because he has been in the Ministry of Commerce for a longer period, and here in DGFT, I've been here for about 2.5 years now, but the only place I went to was America, and that also on a training program. So it is the people, the bureaucrats who are posted in the Ministry of Commerce who travel much more than what we guys do in DGFT. But before that, yes, I have travelled, and as you know, the world is heterogeneous. Like India also, what is good for Assam is not good for Andhra Pradesh. What is good for Karnataka may not be good for Kerala. So every country has its unique social milieu, cultural mix. So, but talking of bringing in efficiency in the systems, in the government sector, of course we have to emulate the Western countries. Where there are well laid out systems. In fact, we often talk about like an international trade. Now, the ease of doing business and facilitation of trade is the highest in the Scandinavian countries: Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway. In our neighborhood, it is Singapore. Okay, so we need to follow these countries, but then. In our country, Singapore is a tiny nation state, okay, a city state. Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, look at their populations and look at ours. There, everything is based on trust. If a container is cleared in 10 minutes, if a parcel is cleared in 1 minute, everything is based on trust. We're trying to do that here also, that we will have what we call a risk management system, RMS, both in exports and imports. Already in customs it has started. So they'll allow everything to go. Only where they find that there is a risk involved by their due diligence, if they find, they'll stop the container. They may do a sample check, they may do 100% check. And if Khuda na khasta, if you've done something wrong, you declare that you are sending say X item, but you have stopped in Y or Z, then you will be hauled up. There will be a very stiff penalty. That's what they do in these Western countries. Till you go scot-free, it's okay. But if you are caught, you are slapped with a very hefty fine. So I think we are working on that kind of a system here. Yeah.
As ma'am said in her presentation that the apparel sector, apart from UAE, we've been showing negative growth in almost all the other countries. And so I want to know what are the problems we are facing in the apparel sector, and apart from subsidies, what all other beneficiaries are you promoting in the apparel sector?
See, as far as I understand your question, you're talking about why UAE has shown better growth as compared to other countries?
Other countries, and why not the other countries?
See, one reason, like Amir sir has said in his presentation, is that UAE also acts as a hub for diverting exports from one country, from India to other countries. So that is one of the reasons why UAE has shown growth, because developing nations have also come up as emerging markets for the apparel exports. And UAE has been playing an important role in diverting the exports from India to other nations. So that is one reason why it has shown growth. Sir, if you would like
Anyway, I'll just try to add on. Tanu is a little shy. She knows everything. I'll tell you, see, India is very strong in natural fiber. And in the worldwide, there is trend of man-made fiber. We are suffering there. Third part which Tanu had pointed out is that they had a competitive advantage in the labor. Both Bangladesh and Vietnam are beating us on the labor front because their labor is much cheaper. Fourth is that India has had an advantage in terms of tariff preferences earlier from an underdeveloped country, which it no longer enjoys. It's a developing country. Bangladesh has a strong advantage in terms of tariff advantage. The final thing is that we have not still got used to international trade in textiles. I'll tell you what is international trade in textiles. We always say, there is a saying in international jargon, मैं हिंदी में बता देता हूँ, then I'll translate. They said, आप जब तक फैब्रिक को सब्जी की तरह नहीं ट्रीट करेंगे, आप सक्सेसफुल नहीं होंगे. I'll tell you what does it mean. Meaning thereby you have to keep the shelf life very low. Meaning thereby that what we do, our international trade in textile used to be that you had a huge stock and then you will do it. The international trend is that keep the supply lean and keep on changing it every week or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. Because the fashion is becoming more important than the texture right now. So you have to invest lots of it in terms of fashion forecast, in terms of color forecast, in terms of fabrics. Now for example, if you see that some fabric comes which can soak more sweat than this fabric, then that will be more important. So or for example, you know the bleeding Madras once used to be the maximum exporter, because what it used to happen, that used to be a cloth, every time you wash, it will leave the color. They said every time it's a new cloth, and the fashion, it was being exported in tons and tons and tons, suddenly that fashion was dropped. So you have to be very, in terms of fabric, in terms of dyes, in terms of color forecast, in terms of fashion forecast, in terms of change which is going, and every continent has a different requirement of the entire fabric. For example, some fabric, some fashion, some material may be good in Latin America, which will be totally different in America, in the neighboring market itself. Inside the same market also, in one corner of the country to other corner of the country, it can be changed, can be different. And then basically you have to realize that what kind of fabric you are going to sell. That is point number one. Point number two is that if you are going to supply the raw material, do you have that control?